Hello, friends. Welcome. Today is story time with Amanda. I am going to share with you guys today the story of my recovery from Lyme disease and exactly what that looked like. I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme in 2011 or 2012, and it is likely that I had it for many, many, many years before that. At least we think I contracted it. We think, but it's possible before then. My senior year of college, I was bit by something. It may have been a tick, I'm not sure. But anything that bites can carry Lyme. And I was bit by something on my arm, and I ended up, let me get this right. I was bit, and then I had a circle that developed, not the traditional Lyme rash, but a circle and a red line coming out of the bite area. And what I thought it was like a mosquito or a spider bite, and I had been scratching it, and I thought maybe it just got infected from scratching it. So I went to the local clinic that was there, emergency clinic, because I was in school in Oklahoma City, and they gave me a round of antibiotics. I took the full round of antibiotics. The line went away. I thought the infection went fully away. However, looking back then, I started to have a series of very interesting symptoms that came up. And so I had horrible headaches. I'd had a change in vision. I had had some numbness and tingling in my feet. And my headaches were really like crazy tension headaches in the back of my neck up here. And I remember going to the school nurse and telling them about my symptoms and what I was experiencing. And she did a tilt blood pressure test on me. So took my blood pressure laying down, sitting up, standing up. And instead of it increasing each time, my blood pressure dropped. And she looked at me, she was like, "That's a little weird. Why don't you go to the hospital and go to the ER and get checked out?" So I went to the closest hospital, and they didn't run any tests on me. They did nothing. I waited in the ER for a while with one of my friends, and then they finally saw me and asked me about 3 questions, told me I had migraines, gave me a packet of information about how migraines are all behind your eyes and up in the front of your head, which I knew because my mom and my sister have had migraines. My mom's had migraines most of her life. So I know what migraines look like, and I knew these weren't migraines. But they sent me home. They're like, "You have migraines, here you go. Good luck," essentially. So I was seeing a PA when I was in Oklahoma City, and I asked her if they could run some tests because I was a little worried that maybe I'd had a brain tumor. I had a friend who had one, and she'd had a lot of similar symptoms. And so I was like, "Can you run some tests and just do some scans, make sure there's no tumors or anything?" So she agreed and said, "Absolutely, let's do that." So we ran some scans, and they all came back clear. And she's like, "I don't know what to tell you." She prescribed some really strong muscle relaxers for me that did help get rid of the headaches. However, then muscle relaxers have a tendency to knock you out a little bit. So then my symptoms kind of seemed to go away for a couple years. And if you know anything about Lyme, you know that can be very common. You can have symptoms and then they can go away, and then you can have symptoms again and they can go away. And things that I had no idea were tied. I had horrible chronic fatigue, which I wasn't eating that well anyway. I wasn't sleeping well. I was taking 21 credit hours in college. I was also part of my dance company. I was working. I was, doing a bajillion things. And I had transferred in my junior year, and I graduated on time. So just a lot, really full schedule. So I probably shot my adrenals too, all these things that I just figured I'm exhausted because of that. Well, fast forward several years later, I was having horrible periods, very heavy, very painful. I also had really weird symptoms. I'd wake up with night sweats. My eye twitched very frequently, and muscle spasm, things like that. So I had no idea that all of these things could be connected to Lyme until getting my diagnosis and then realizing, when I started diving in and learning about symptoms, like these are all very common symptoms. So long story short, I was at an integrative medical clinic, and I need to give the disclaimer that this is my personal story that I'm sharing here. I'm not giving medical advice in any way, shape, or form. I'm sharing this as an encouragement because I know chronic Lyme can be a very lonely journey. It can be a very difficult journey because it's one of those invisible diseases that people don't recognize from the outside. They look at you and they just think you're fine, but you're in pain, you're exhausted, your personality can change sometimes, like just all sorts of things that the general public and even your friends and family don't know that you're experiencing and don't understand even when you tell them. So I understand that, and I want you to know you are not alone and there is hope. So those are the things that I want to share with you today. But so my journey was, I was at an integrated medical clinic. It's where I received a blood test. CD57 is a white blood cell that is suppressed by Lyme, and your numbers are supposed to be up in the hundreds, okay, of that blood cell count. Mine, when I got tested, was 10. So it was funny because I remember the head of the medical clinic asking me, he was like, "Are you sure you're not symptomatic?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. What are the symptoms of Lyme?" Because I actually went for a case of ringworm that I had gotten that I wasn't able to get rid of. And I had tried all the over-the-counter stuff. And so I went and I was like, let's see, what might be going on. And they wanted to run all of these tests. And I thought, well, that's silly. I don't, need that for any reason. But Lyme, you may or may not know, impacts your digestive system a lot too. And so they were helping me understand that a lot of times, like fungal infections, like ringworm and that sort of thing, can be linked to, it's a symptom of digestive imbalance and symptoms in your gut, because the gut is where a lot of your immune system is at and everything. So we had dived into that, but then because of some of my other symptoms of just really chronic fatigue things, that's why we ran the Lyme panel. And so we started going through treatments, and I did some unconventional treatments. I was doing hydrogen peroxide IVs as well as UVB treatments. So they would I would go in 3 times a week, and they would pull blood out of my arm and put it through a machine that exposed it to UVB light, and then it would put it back in. So it would sanitize the blood, and then it would, they sanitize it and then put it back in your body, if that makes sense. And then I'd receive a hydrogen peroxide drip afterwards to help as well. I did that 3 times a week for like a year and a half. And my numbers improved, but I plateaued. So if I remember, I'd have to look at my exact documents, but I want to say I was up in the 80s from 10. So good improvement. And then I was also I started taking some herbal supplements that there is a doctor, oh my gosh, what is his name? I will link it down in the description below. Treatlyme.net was the name of his website at the time. And I think that's still around. And he had recommended a combination of Banderol and Cemento, which is cat's claw. So Banderol and Cemento together as an herbal combination. So I began doing that at the same time I was doing the other treatments. And I saw a little bit more improvement. And my numbers were improving. My doctors were encouraged. And I was starting to feel better. Although if you're going through Lyme treatments right now, when you start treating Lyme, you get die-off symptoms. And so a lot of times your symptoms get worse before the healing takes place. And so I was experiencing all of the symptoms, very impacted by the moon cycles, and new moon, full moon were like, I was flat on my bed, just in so much pain and exhaustion, horrible, horrible headaches. So, and involuntary muscle spasms, like my finger would just all of a sudden cramp and start like moving in shapes. And I wasn't doing that. It was just doing it on its own. But fast forward about a little over a year into treatment. And then I started talking to a naturopath who encouraged me to start looking into the Gerson Therapy, to buy a juicer and to do juicing and coffee enemas. And so I looked into that. I was like, okay, well, that seems new to me, but hey, if this has been used for a long time, and I did research on it and found that they can be very safe and very effective. And the Gerson therapy is very frequently used with cancers and other chronic illnesses, but that people of all different chronic illnesses have seen improvements with them. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. So I did their juicing protocol and the coffee enemas, and that helped a lot as well. And then after I was doing that for a couple months, one of my friends had mentioned this conference that he had been exposed to called, it was a Spiritual Roots of Disease conference. He'd been reading a book by the pastor who used to lead this mission outreach and these conferences. And they were held just a few hours from where I lived in Atlanta area at the time, down in South Georgia. And it was a week-long conference called the For My Life Conference through Health Ministries. And they really were diving into the spiritual roots of disease, which I was really unfamiliar with at that time. I knew nothing about spiritual and emotional connections to physical things in the body. And especially when it comes to something like Lyme or an infection, a chronic infection, it's like, yeah, but that's caused from an outside force. There's an actual bacteria that's causing the Lyme. Well, what I learned is that Lyme obviously is caused by Borrelia burgdorferi, that's the bacteria. However, conditions become chronic frequently when there are certain underlying sins and emotions. So things like bitterness, resentment, perfectionism was one of the roots, and I'm missing bitterness, resentment, perfectionism, and what was the fifth one? Oh, occultism. Were mixed in there. And I at first was like, well, obviously perfectionism was something that I had already been battling. So that one rang true immediately. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, and fear was connected in there as well. But I had always thought, I don't deal with fear. I live my life through faith. I don't think I'm a fearful person. And then it was funny because they had a ministry list and they had all these different lists of fears. You open the book and I was like, oh, okay, but some of those things do ring a bell. And so went through that. I also never considered myself to be a bitter person or have unforgiveness, but I had had a broken heart not long before that. And that caused a whole lot of things physically in my body just because I was emotionally unable to handle the emotions. And so those at the time just got pushed down, and that caused physical changes in my body. And then some unforgiveness that I thought I had dealt with. My family and I had been through a situation where we'd had a lot of slander spread about us, and just really hard year that I thought I had forgiven everybody that had done that and participated in that. But it was clear there was still emotion attached to it. So it was one of those things where like I started learning that when you've really healed from the experience, the memory will be there, but the emotion doesn't come up anymore. It's not like this thing that's still inside of you. You can detach from it in a very healthy way that remembers what happened, but has moved on from what happened. And it doesn't trigger anything inside you anymore. And so when, and then I also learned some things in my family, occultic wise, just generational, that had been there that I was unfamiliar with and didn't know about. And when I repented for those things that I had been holding on to, things that also that just my generations had been a part of, immediately the Lord healed me. And I was symptom free immediately. It was a miraculous healing. as far as the Lyme goes. The Lyme was gone. Now, I still had residual effects after that, and like my digestive system was a mess. It is so much better night and day. I had tons of food sensitivities, and my skin was horribly broken out all over. I had really, really bad breakout across my entire face, and nothing that I had tried was making it any better. Just lots of little things like that were a healing process afterwards. Still that healing is a process. Miracles happen instantaneously, but healing is a process. And so I just want to bring you hope that if you are going through Lyme right now, or if you have a close family member or a friend, first of all, if you have if you have a close family member or a friend who's dealing with Lyme and it's not you personally, the best thing you can do is listen to them, believe them when they tell you things that are going on, but also encourage them that healing is possible and that there is a purpose in their journey, and that it's one of those things. I want to say this to those of you that are watching that are dealing with Lyme or any other chronic illness as well, because I found myself in a place where I never understood the story when Jesus is talking to the paralytic and he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Like, I never understood that. It was kind of like, well, duh, why would he not? But I realized there were a lot of things, because the Lord's been continuing to work healing in my life, and one of those is with scoliosis that I've dealt with since 6th grade. And I realized I had a fear of healing because I knew how tall I was. I knew, how to move, and I was comfortable in my body, even though it was super, super crooked, that was normal to me. I knew that it became part of my identity. And I feel like chronic illness a lot of times can become part of our identities. People will talk about like, oh, I'm a Lyme, or my Lyme disease, or one of the biggest things you can do is separate that. It is not you. It is not your identity. And so don't take that on, because that's not who God has created you to be. You have a disease you're dealing with. Yes, that's real. We're not in denial about that. But it's not who you are. Those are two separate things. And I think when you're going through treatments and it's so easy to feel alone in other areas, and the treatment's so much a part of your life. I mean, I was at the integrative medical center at least 3 times a week, usually 4 times a week for several hours. I'd go to the sauna in the morning and detox that way. And I had chiropractic appointments there. And I had, just all the different things that it became so much a part of my daily routine to do healing practices. And it was really easy to connect that to myself. And I think that's a dangerous place to be, because it can become comfortable. And getting outside of that and desiring to get well, I realized, we could have a fear of healing. And that's why Jesus asked him, do you want to be well? Do you want to? Are you willing to lay down anything that stands in the way of your healing? Are you willing to give that up? So I just want to encourage you that this is much bigger than a physical thing. We are made as God's made us, we're spirits in a body. We have a soul, and all of those things are intertwined, that they are holistic, that you're not just a body and just a body part and treating just this one thing. So when you are working on your soul, on your emotions, on sanctification, on repentance, confession, all of those things really contribute to physical healing and are intertwined. So I hope this blesses you today. I get asked so frequently about my Lyme story, and so many people want encouragement and want to connect it with others. So please feel free to share this video. It's why I'm putting it out there, is because I am asked so frequently and it does take a lot of time to share. And if you still have questions, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. Feel free to reach out via any of my social channels that are linked below in the description, and I would love to chat with you further. If you need encouragement or want to know just any resources or anything, I would love to point you towards those. Anything I can do to help you, and most importantly, I would love to pray for you. So even if you don't have questions, if I can be in prayer for you, please let me know. I feel like the greatest gift that we have is getting to intercede for others. And I really do believe that part of the reason the Lord had me walk through the journey that He did with Lyme was to encourage others who are going through it now. And so God bless you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, friends.